So was it the environment of high school that got you more into like a jazz vibe, or did you just kind of gravitated to it naturally, or what kind of happened with that? When you were 14 years old, what were you listening to?
Oh man. I mean, I was by osmosis listening to all my mom's music that she had on all the time. She'd have the radio on to her stuff or records, and it was all old blues, like no electricity, like all the old blues stuff you can imagine. And it was embarrassing for me because if I brought my friends over and Lead Belly was on, it was like, it was weird to them. It was like there was some weird cult going on or something, because like it wasn't the Beatles or Peaches and Herb or whatever was popular at that time.
Reunited.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. I always bring that up. It was like one of the first 45s I got was Reunited,
Oh, I remember well. Well, we're about the same age. I think I've got a year on you. I was born in 66.
Yeah, 67. So, all right.
I remember in middle school when you had to have that learning how to dance segment of your gym class, and the slow dance song was Reunited. Oh yeah.
Oh man. But
so
yeah,
she was listening to all this old blue stuff. That must have been cool. Although whatever your parents are listening to, it seems it's just not cool. No matter how cool it probably actually was. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So you rebelled against this, I would imagine.
Yeah, I don't know if I rebelled. I just was when I got into guitar. You know how it is when you get into guitar, all these doors start opening up. And so I was listening. My sister and I had an AM radio that had KDIA was the station, which was like the soul station in Oakland. So we got all that great stuff. And then there was Cal-X, which was on an FM station, which we could get in the car or in the living room, right? And that was like college. Really, you'd have all this weird music on there. And then, whatever our friends were playing. And there were so many guitar players that I just slowly got into this music. But early on, honestly, man, I think you and I probably listened to a lot of the same stuff because I was really into, of course, you're learning Beatles songs, you're trying to learn some Jimi Hendrix stuff. Right. But really, I was into like a lot of, I guess what you would call roots music. Right. My mom had a box of tapes that she worked at WBAI in New York, WBAI, and made all these cassette tapes, and on it was all this classic stuff. It'd be like Chuck Berry and like the Burnett Brothers and Bobby Bland, and then like Gene Vincent. And so I really immediately and Johnny Guitar Watson and Guitar Slim and stuff like that. So it was weird because my friends were into like metal or like Prince, or they were into Prince. And I was really into this old weird music. Right. And because of it, I'm sure it was, I'm gonna have to ask you, but I ended up getting a bunch of gigs with guys that were like our age then. Right. Playing like 50s music. So tell me though, for you, was that the same experience that you had? Did you?
It was. I mean, I was the youngest of 7 kids. So, oh wow! And my brother was the oldest, and I was the youngest, and there were 5 girls in between. So I had to room with my brother, who had all these old records. So it was all, Cream, Hendrix, James Gang, all this type of stuff. And I really was like gravitated to music, like the ins and outs of it at a very young age. So I was like reading, I had this Hendrix book when I was in 3rd grade or something. And it would mention, Muddy Waters and B.B. King and Albert King and Howlin' Wolf. So I kind of did my homework early on. So I started listening to this little radio station that would be on every night at like 10:30 on the public radio station. They would play, Portraits in Blue, where they would take a blues artist and kind of give their oral history as well as playing some of their music. So I started getting into it, but it was the same thing. Most of the people that were my age were into, Van Halen or whatever the case may be. And, and I had the first couple Van Halen records. And then after that, I just was not interested in it.
Yeah. You have to check it out. Right. Especially if you're that age, there's a lot of butt sniffing going on. You had to check it out. Exactly. You couldn't just leave it on the shelf. You had to get it and check it out and see if you could do it.
Right.
And then if you could do it, then you would be like, okay, cool, I can do that. Let me move. I've satisfied that adolescent need for supremacy in my mind.
Exactly. Exactly. But yeah, it was all the older guys. I started playing gig. Like when I started playing guitar, when I was a freshman in high school or in 8th grade, I was playing late 8th grade, freshman high school. I was playing with all the seniors. And then once they went, I started doing gigs. All the guys were way older, the blues guys and stuff. And I was cutting my teeth on playing with these guys that, as you said, are about our age now.
Yeah.
And
which is valuable though, man. Because that's the thing that you see with these younger players is they don't have that lineage. Because I don't mean to sound like a douche and asshole.
Right, I hear what you're saying.
But I'm just saying that even if we didn't know it, and we're playing with these crusty old guys that would pay us like $20 a gig and laugh at us, we were still playing with people who had played with people when they were young that were old. Right. So it's handed down in this long kind of way. And I feel like a big problem with the kids now is the music school thing is not a substitute for that.
True.
Yep. It's not a substitute for that kind of visceral, grisseral experience.
Visceral pummeling and humiliation. Yeah, it was an interesting thing. I don't know if you felt the same thing as well, and maybe it's just speaking to my own dysfunction, which is manifest in several different categories, but be that as it may. I remember being hanging out with all of these guys that were much older, and there was kind of this poo-pooing of younger guys playing this music. You really had to pay your dues. And I remember at the time of going, yeah, but, Clapton was 19 when he played on that Blues Breakers record. And, and all these idols of mine had kind of made it by 21. But these guys were like, you don't know until you get older, until their kids got to be of the age that they were the Wunderkind. And then it was okay. You know what I
mean? Oh my God, it's so amazing. Listen to that C chord. Little Johnny could really play the shit out of that C chord.
Exactly.
He's got a gig.
But I remember that so much. Like, listen, you don't know anything. Wait till you got to do this, and wait till you go on the road. And I'm like, okay. And then all of a sudden, a few years later, once those kids the boomers were old enough they were like, oh, it's perfectly fine for them to have gigs. You know what I mean? I'm like, whatever. But
exactly.
Music is music, so it's all good. I just think it's funny.
Yeah.
That's all I'm saying. We just think it's funny.
I just think it's funny. And I took down all of the names and numbers of those people, and retribution will be visited upon them on kind.
Yes. Take it. So tell me about, I'm fascinated by the prospect of you at some point at a young age just said, I'm going to go to Paris, France, and just kind of rock out and see what happens. What was that all about? Tell me about it.
Oh, well, man, I was kind of floundering around and making some bad choices when I was like in my, 18, 19. And I had a friend who was a guy who I went to high school with who was originally from France, but he came over when he was like 14. So we got into all kinds of mayhem. Good dude. And he actually, his name is Thomas Hollier, and he actually ended up being one of the first guys I knew that bought a computer back in the 80s. And I'm like, what do you have that for? Like, you know what I mean? I'm like, what's that for? What are you going to do with that? You know what I mean? Like an asshole. He goes, well, I'm going to write a program to do animation on this. I was like, really? And then he was doing this very early animation. He ended up going on to be one of the guys that was like one of the lead animators on like Polar Express and Stuart Little and movies. Like, he moved to LA. He followed his thing. He became like a real heavyweight in that universe. It's pretty fascinating. But anyway, he said, my sister has a little apartment and she's going to be gone for a month. So if you could get enough money for an airplane ticket, come over here and I see, you could play on the street. And I was like, okay. So I had enough money to get an airplane ticket and a mouse amplifier. And then I went, and then that was it. I was over in Europe for like 3 years. And after, her apartment was like as big as her apartment was like 144 square feet,
Oh man.
And, but I was over there for 3 years, and when that apartment went up, I just kind of was on the street. But if you're an American, like a place like Paris, you are the criminal element. You know what I mean? So it wasn't like I felt, and I had made all these cool friends from playing music on the street. This one guy, Jean-Baptiste Boussagou, is this guy from Gabon in Africa. And we ended up hooking up, and he kind of showed me the ropes. Then I met a bunch of other people. This guy, Tamongo Van Kaysel, I don't know if you know him. He's an incredible tap. He is like a world-class tap dancer and African stilt dancer. Amazing. Like, you know, he goes around the world doing all these heavy dance. It's a whole world that we don't really know about, but is heavy cat. I met him and some others, and they said, hey man, we got to go to Zurich, Switzerland, because that's where the money is. And then they took me under their wing. I went to Zurich, but I had to switch to upright bass because it was like a hazing. You know, I had never really played upright bass, but I had decent ears, and I could kind of, playing upright bass on the street, like carrying it around was the easy part. That was the easy part, you know, and it was a plywood bass. And I just remember my fingers were taped together and still like raw, like hamburger. It was unbelievable. You know, so I did that for a while. Then, of course, it was just became all about the guitar again, and played lots of stuff with singers, and that's how I started to kind of develop that kind of I stole the Tuck Andrews and the Joe Pass, whatever I could steal, and that's kind of where that stuff came from.
So you